There's been a lot of talk about NACS, primarily the fact that it sucks.
Stop, map number 1, 16 to 11. Oh no, Summit!
I wanted to make a video talking about what happened and the factors that I think led to NACS kind of falling off. To be fair, we were never really that great, but we were better than, what it is now. Before I can talk about what happened and what it is now, I want to talk about Boxer and this shirt that they just made for me. Well, actually, I don't think they made it for me, but my face is on it. Shout out to Launders and his team over at Boxer for the shirt. I love, the fact that Stu's face is so big. I'm gonna be wearing this all day. Not sponsored, I just really like what they're doing. So yeah, back to the video. What was NACS back in, I would say 2015, 2016, all the way till pretty much the start of COVID, right?
A manager! How am I supposed to win? He's a fucking manager!
It was a fun time, honestly. The scene was on the come up the whole time.
What's up, bitch?
There was a lot of viewership. I think part of that was just the streamers that we had.
Swag, what's your name?
As a player, I was looking forward to playing FPL every single night, and there were a lot of people streaming it, so I could only assume that as a viewer and a fan, you guys probably had something to look forward to as well. The next thing that we had a lot of org support. Orgs are important for one reason and one reason only, and that is paychecks. There aren't a lot in NA, or at the moment, which, part of the reason why I'm making this video. Obviously, org support is really important for making sure that the players can kind of go all in and fully focus on CS. It also just contributes to a thriving scene. Yeah, it's just something that is not really a thing right now. And most of the orgs in North America right now, there are a few, but a lot of them have, 2 to 3 European imports. So not really supporting all NA players. Obviously, they're supporting some, but very different from back then. And then another thing is just the lack of tournaments in North America. And I'm not talking about big, IEM Chicago, ESL 1 New York. Obviously those tournaments were great to have, but I'm just talking about like a lot of online tournaments even, or like small DreamHack tournaments that would happen in North America. And I feel like before those tournaments are kind of what helped, especially the tier 2 North American scene, it's what helped that scene kind of develop, because the tier 1 teams, they were always playing in Europe anyways. But right now, it's not really a thing. What is NACS now? Well, if you take the list of what I just said and you reversed it, that's pretty much NACS now. So not a lot of viewership. There are some content creators that are, they're doing a great job, but not a lot. Not a lot of tournaments, probably because there was a lot of match fixing going on.
The matters escalated. In that case, we are looking at 35 players, 6 or 7 teams.
That's a lot.
NACS is not completely dead yet, but it will be, apparently.
And not a lot of org support. So with all those things considered, the scene is just not where it used to be. And on top of that, when a North American team does make it to a tournament in Europe, we've rarely seen them do well. Now, I'm talking about full North American teams, not teams that have 2 or more imports.
Why you bullying me?
Just strictly North American teams. When they go to Europe, I just have to be honest, they lose pretty convincingly.
13-4, say goodbye to Nouns as they are sent home.
He swings on through the single tap. NRG, they're going home, and MIBR, as you can see, still alive.
Off the bomb again, no chance. Nico back with the final kill, and my god, did he deserve it? They survive the EG scare, and G2 get to send them packing.
Compared to back then, we actually had teams that would win international tournaments. I'm thinking Optic, E-League.
A 2-on-4 spray comes through. Rush gets a kill, and ladies and gentlemen, Optic Gaming, your winners of E-League Season 2.
Obviously, us on Cloud9, we won EPL and a few other tournaments. Obviously the Boston Major.
And thank you for all the fans who showed up.
Congratulations, Skadoodle. Once again, your E-League Major champion is Cloud9!
Liquid with their Grand Slam in 2019. I mean, we had teams that were actually competing for titles, or at least to get deep runs in tournaments. Now we're going to talk about why did NACS die. I'm going to talk about pretty much what I think is the biggest reason, and that is Shroud retiring.
Fuck!
Now, the second biggest reason is
this fucking game is shit!
Tarek retiring. And I know what you're thinking, Tim, you were so much better than both of them. Like, the scene should have been able to live on even after they retired. And while I agree with you, I'm not talking about in-game wise. I'm talking about their streams were huge. I mean, Shroud was pulling in, I think, about 10,000 viewers every night. Tarek was, 5 to 10,000. And I think this did a lot for the CS community. For one, it brought a lot of eyes to the nightly FPL games. It brought a lot of fans. I think that overall, it just brought a lot of support for teams like C9 for Shroud and Optic for Tarek. We're just missing that right now.
We lose the Glocks!
And even the smaller streamers, Dazed, Shaz, No One, Lasky, even those streamers, I feel like we're missing that. Back then as a viewer, I felt like you could probably find someone that you liked and watch FPL every night, and I felt like that brought a sense of community that is no longer really a thing.
Yo, hello. You hear me, yeah? You hear me. You guys fucking suck.
Right now, it just feels sort of like a free-for-all.
How could this happen to me?
Okay, so the next thing that happened that really hurt CS, in my opinion, was COVID. Now, obviously, COVID wasn't in our control, and it just sucked for everyone, but it really did hurt the CS scene, especially the competitive scene, because that's where all the tournaments were online. There wasn't really that much hype because it was the same match week after week, right? I think overall, the scene it wasn't dead, but I felt like that was kind of the start of things trending downwards. The second thing that really hurt NACS was, you guessed it, Valorant coming out. Now, the reason why Valorant hurt us so much was because it really shut off the talent pipeline, if you will. If you break up the NA scene back then in terms of tiers, obviously this is a completely objective tier system, so who you see is objectively in that tier. So you had tier 1 pros, you had tier 2 pros, and you had tier 3 pros. Now, what happened when Valorant came out, some tier 1 pros went to Valorant. I feel like almost all tier 2 pros went to Valorant. And then the tier 3 pros, they didn't go to Valorant because they were going to get outshined by the tier 2 pros anyways. So most of them stayed in NACS. And what that did was the tier 3 pros now became tier 2. So we didn't see the effects of Valorant until later on, because at the time, all the teams were still intact, right? Team Liquid was still a team.
As we know, Liquid is a dead team, as I heard, at least.
EG was still a team.
You got to win today, mate. Shouldn't you be happy?
Yeah, I'm happy, but it's EG.
Yeah? Oh, jeez. Okay.
Gen G, we were still a team. But as things started happening, such as tier 1 pros retiring, going to Valorant, going to Europe, now that's when it started to become a problem. And the main reason for that is just there weren't enough players the tier 1 pros could pick up who were ready for their shot at tier 1. That's no fault of the tier 3 players. That's just how it was. When you're a tier 3 pro, you're just not ready as a player to play in Europe. It's a different game in Europe, if I'm being honest. We're still playing Counter-Strike. Of course, you can still headshot someone, but there's a lot of strategy and a lot of experience that comes into play in Tier 1 CS on the pro circuit. Now, the Tier 1 pros that did stay in North America, I think the IGLs and the players that were able to teach the younger players were definitely the most valuable. I mean, you can see what Wildcard is able to do with Stan. Took that team and made it a really good team, honestly. Like, they're doing really well in Europe. But even with him, they had to import 2 Europeans. If it was a team of Stan and 4 NA rookies, it might have been a different story. EG Black, when Stan was on that team, I don't think they did that well. In North America, of course they did well, but I'm talking about when you go to Europe. And now we see Nitro, kind of the same thing. I mean, he has a veteran in OC now, but they also brought in a European. I think Nitro is definitely a valuable piece to that team. And, I'm interested to see how that team turns out. But where does this leave the rest of the teams? Well, the rest of the tier 3 teams, I guess now tier 2, and even in North America, some of these teams are considered tier 1. That leaves them with no vets. It's basically a team full of rookies. And again, I'm not trying to talk smack about how good they are. They could be really good. good, but I think that the scene is not set up for them to be able to transition or break through to tier 1, mainly because there are no veterans. The importance of veterans, you know, back in the day, people used to think, oh, I don't understand why, you know, why this team keeps recycling old players. And while sometimes I agree with that, most of the time it's because to take a risk on a new player, it takes a lot of time. You have to invest. Think about all the young players that were given a shot and didn't make it. I mean, even in Europe, most of the time you give a player a shot, they don't really take advantage of it the first time around. And you have to invest a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of resources in order to give that player, you know, a good chance. And that's just something that orgs normally aren't willing to do. I would say that it takes an average of 6 months for, we'll just call them tier 2 NA pro, to really understand how to play in Europe. But by that point, that's mainly when orgs, they decide that it's time to move on. Okay, so one thing that I always learned was don't just bring up problems. You gotta bring up a solution as well. So, you know, with everything I said in mind, what is the solution? How do we get North America back on track? I think the obvious one is to pick me up. Just kidding. I'm retired. Seriously though, I think that, you know, having veterans on the team, or at least people who are somewhat experienced, really does help the younger generation. It might not be enough to win, because in my opinion, you need 3, if not 4 experienced players to really, you know, help a young player grow. But you know, it might set up some players for success. The second solution that I kind of thought of is what I'm currently doing right now, and that's making content. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, there are a few content creators now, you know, Cooper, Flom, Stu, you know, those are some guys that are really carrying NA on their back right now, but I'm here to join them. And I want to make content for North America so that we can hopefully bring some more eyes to North America and maybe bring a sense of community. You know, I think that's one thing that North America is kind of lacking right now. So I guess final thoughts for this video on how to make NA not suck again is just please subscribe to my YouTube channel, please sub to my Twitch, and yeah, have a good day.